Hello and welcome to Building Research Relevance. My name is Stephen Shaw. I'm Department Chair of Educational and Counseling Psychology at McGill University. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the role of accessing published information or any information related to research as an important part of making research relevant. A lot of what happens is when we get a project, we submit it to a refereed scholarly publication. Those papers are published, and quite often those journals have copyright. The authors really sign over the copyright to the journal, so the journal owns your work at that point. And sometimes the journals are owned by private major publishers like Elsevier and Sage and Taylor and Francis and these types of groups. And to access those articles that were written in that journal, you need to either subscribe to the journal or to pay for it. And those payments can go anywhere from, I think the cheapest I saw was $17.50 up to $35 to $40 for somebody to buy the article. I even see they're starting to move to rent the article. You can only keep it for a couple of days before it expires, and I guess it just dissolves in your drive or something like that at that point. But if you're trying to make your research relevant to clinicians, teachers, psychologists, policymakers, and things like that, you want to have a distribution. You want to have a way to do it, but you don't really have the copyright. So how do we keep our ideas alive and keep them from being stuck behind a paywall? Now, there's a lot more research such as open access, which does allow anyone to have access to it. Quite often, open access journals cost a lot of money for the researchers. You have to pay a significant amount of money. Usually it's somewhere in the area, it depends what it is, but somewhere in the area between $3,000 and $12,000 to have that article be something that other people can access. So it's a lot of money. A lot of people write grants now. If you're writing grants, you are putting money in the grant budget to make sure that your articles are open access. But even then, grant money is harder and harder to come by. And spending your budget on open access fees when you really would rather pay a graduate student so they can actually afford to eat lunch or go to a conference, it's not ideal. So, and it's just a bizarre thing because, as you know, and if you talk to anyone outside of academia, the publishing system makes no sense. And it's really designed to keep access from happening. It's not intentionally designed for that to happen, but that's the logical conclusion. Because often our research is taxpayer funded through grants. We do taxpayer research. We publish in these journals. Taxpayers cannot get access to it. The only way they can get access to it is often through public universities. So taxpayers paid for the research. Then the taxpayers pay again for universities to have access as another taxpayer service. So taxpayers are paying multiple times, and every time it's the publishing companies that make the money. That's fine. Whatever your views on it are, that's great. Bottom line, though, is people who are supposed to have access and benefit from the research that's supposed to be relevant don't have access to it. You can do preprints. Most journals will allow you to submit it to a preprint server. This gives it a digital object identifier, or DOI, and then anyone can go in and get it. Now, the problem is when you put it in a preprint server, most journals will allow you to submit it after it's appeared in a preprint server. So you put it in a preprint, submit it for a journal, you get kind of the best of both worlds. That's fine. But anything that's preprint is not peer-reviewed. That's a thing. I'm just not convinced peer review has all that much value added, but some value added. So you don't have that. You don't see that many articles in preprint. One of the big things was they would get post-publication review. You submit a preprint, it's published, and then it comes back and people will comment on it. I don't see very many articles getting that sort of commentary. So how do we trade off between quality and access and making sure everybody who needs it has access to it? And this is a big thing because most ideas die on the vine. They collect dust. They really do. It's a real problem. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I've been playing with the idea of creating a repository for projects where all the required shared data sets, shared protocols for implementation, and all papers go through a forensic methods review to ensure all aspects of data checking take place, and then we put it in this specialized repository for anyone to have access to. You can also create post-publication endorsements for papers who meet at least some set of standards with methodology and reporting. Yeah, endorsements are weird. I just hate the idea of calling things badges. It's very, I'm very, Alfonso Bedoya about that. Badges, we don't need no stinking badges. To anyone who's a Treasurer this Sierra Madres fan knows that one. We don't need no stinking badges. But sometimes endorsements can help because it does give the consumers ideas that things have been through a serious review, not a peer review of uneven quality that may or may not have happened. They can have access and be assured that many aspects of this have been met. So that's something we kind of think about. And so, we have to have these issues because why even have access if access means you can read research that's not even credible? So we need to work on that. Also, it's really important to remember that we're getting really tight with these companies. They know there's some threat. They know that their people are seeing that publishing in academic journals and owning the copyright and not paying authors or reviewers and paying editors very poorly, they're making all the money. And they know that can't last forever. What that really means, though, is when you sign a copyright agreement with a paper, we're seeing more and more publishing companies really start to enforce those. You know your copyright agreement on can you distribute your paper? How can you distribute your paper? My recommendation is share your data and your paper as far as wide as is legally possible. It is important to remember that publication companies are really required to enforce their copyright standards. So they will look for you and they will try to find if you violated the copyright procedures and the copyright agreement, and there could be action against you. But our purpose, we have to remember that this is a big thing. Our purpose is to develop ideas, test those ideas, and then disseminate them. The purpose, despite the incentives of academic structure and academic culture, it's not just to publish the papers. It's to get ideas, to test them, disseminate them, make a difference. It's not simply to produce a paper. Sometimes that distinction is lost on a lot of folks. I think when we put something in a publication that's not open access, and people have a very hard time getting it, we're even seeing entire universities and university systems simply drop out and not pay for these publications at all. So even the students at many universities don't have access. I get quite a few requests from my colleagues in California and in some European countries that say they need this Elsevier journal, but their university doesn't subscribe to it. Can I get it for them? And yes, I do that. And yes, go ahead. You can come after me for that. That's fine. But getting information out there that we do, again, we don't want to collect dust. We don't want to be in a repository that nobody reads, just in a dusty old journal. I'm a big fan of how we can do this is to treat the research we do is very much like how a standard comedian or a recording artist functions. You write an article or a series of articles on a topic. Then you take it on the road, especially if it's interesting to a lot of people. You can do workshops with this, training workshops, ideas, presentations, press releases. You can go out and do this because continuing education is required by many psychologists, so creating a presentation is great. In other words, you're taking it on the road. Your ideas need to come in contact with reality. That's how you make research relevant. And you don't have to worry too much about the copyright issues. You can present your data in other fora. You just can't, make 1,000 copies or put them on a personal website. That's often a problem. So you want to keep those ideas going. So you go out and you touch the people. Touch grass, touch reality. Have your ideas meet reality, not the reality of a peer reviewer and editor. Distribute those ideas out there. Then you get to integrate feedback from these other people. This isn't working. This isn't reality. This isn't the culture that we have. You can take that, integrate it, then you have great fuel to write either improved papers, improve ideas, improve models, improve theories. You can begin writing grants based on this because your ideas have at least touched reality. Then you can even write a book about it if you wish. Now, sometimes we're getting, many of us in research universities, writing books is not really something that's greatly valued anymore, but writing grants is. So, that's something we can do. But I think this is a big part of the process. You conduct some research in areas, you write 2 or 3 or 4 studies, 5 studies, whatever it is, publish those. Then it's time to put together a useful workshop. This guarantees that your work is working towards being relevant to clinicians, and it is better for clinical work. But you can also present it to student bodies, present it to other research labs. You can do that online through Zoom or Teams. And it works great. In other words, what you're trying to do with this isn't so much teach the world about all your brilliance, but what it's trying to do is touch reality. It's trying to go out there and test it with real people who find research relevant or not relevant. And once you do that, you have this tour and you can get new information, keep your ideas alive and keep them going. If they're interested in finding these ideas, they can get it. But what you do is you present it typically orally. A lot of people have podcast about this. And that sounds pretty good. But this keeps your ideas from collecting dust. It keeps them relevant. It keeps your ideas in there. You need to be a good storyteller, by the way. You're telling a story with data. And I find this is the best way to increase all your access and all of your research becoming more relevant is to have a data-based story. So this is it. This is how you keep data and ideas from getting lost, because you can't protect ideas over a long time. As we talk about how do we keep ideas and stories alive culturally, the oral tradition has always been used. Then it was written language and things like that. We think about how many ideas were just lost when libraries were destroyed and there were fires and things like that, and we lost so many ideas. One of the best ways to reconstruct those lost ideas was actually piracy. People stole books and stole ideas. Then it gets disseminated into the culture. That's how you keep ideas alive and from collecting dust. We've seen this with ideas from the Roman Empire that were collected in Ireland by monks. Religious people, government people are often the ways to keep that in. But that's less efficient than piracy. When people steal ideas, when people copy movies, we've seen this happen with old celluloid movies from the 1920s and 30s, that we lost aspects of those original tapes that we can't get back. You know what we're finding it? People who illegally copied the movies. And we're calling out to pirates of video to try to get that information to fill in the blanks. It's kind of an exciting thing. I'm not suggesting piracy in violation of law, but I am just suggesting that we disseminate things out widely. But to do this, people have to be interested. And how they're interested is you have to be a great storyteller. A great storyteller who's good with data. Right now in psychology, we do have a few people who are great at telling stories. Their reliance on data is not awesome. Like Gabor Mate, Jordan Peterson, these guys are incredible storytellers. It's easier when you can just make stuff up, or certainly cherry pick ideas. But how you gain true access and relevance in research is not to do pure fiction, not to do just based on a true story of stuff that's sort of okay, not just cherry pick data, but also, and not an ascientific monograph. You can do well-researched, nuanced nonfiction. That's what I really recommend. A little bit stronger than Malcolm Gladwell, although what a great storyteller he is. I find he's selective in his research because he wants to tell the right story. We have to be nuanced. Data do not always tell a perfect story. It's the real world. But what is our component of the nuance is how is our work going to become more relevant? If you focus on that, you'll always have a story. So expand the world out there. Talk to a lot of people about your work. Spread your work out in different mechanisms, and we can get beyond the publish in a referee journal that nobody else will read, no one has access to, or spend thousands of dollars for something that people have access to but won't because it's too dry. Make it a story, get out there, touch grass, make your ideas face reality. That will keep them relevant, that will keep them focused, that will keep your ideas alive and regenerating new ideas. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time on Building Research Relevance.